Well, today's exciting. We are going to dive into the men's dojo.
Oh, there we go. That sounds promising.
But before we do dive into what is that and what's going on with, what is a sex dojo, I want to understand even what's behind the why. Like, why do we want to do this? Especially you, because you're going to be leading. It's a year-long, very immersive sex training for guys.
Well, it's a men's community around
everything. The bedroom. Yeah. And
sexual mastery.
Yeah. And I feel really inspired by it because I just feel like it's the one area that is often kind of left out, or it's only addressed, there's only elements of it addressed and not a cohesive ecosystem, which is what I'm really excited about for the men's dojo. So tell us why initially you were interested in, or began to be interested in, supporting men to explore more in the bedroom.
Well, there's 3 stories that I want to tell, kind of lead up to this. So first of all I was teaching how to be a social coach. I was teaching men as a social coach how they could start to meet other women. And the second one is actually in a maximum security prison with maximum security prisoners. And the third one is at a leadership training where I am listening in, talking with a lot of men that are active in these different men's communities.
Okay, perfect. So get us going. I'm really curious.
So Social
coach.
I'm traveling the world, going around the world, teaching guys how to be able to interact with women. Also even teaching women how to interact with guys. But the one thing that showed up over and over again, they'd learn how to bring the person home with them, but then once they got there, they didn't know what to do.
Oops.
So there is a lack of skills that need to be taught. Basically, just like anything else. If you want to play basketball, if you want to run, you want to, do anything at a level of excellence, you need to be taught how to do it.
Yes, especially if you're being coached to come across as confident, use your voice in this way, just all this social coaching stuff. Yes. And so the woman's like, oh my God, this guy's going to be an Adonis in bed. And then it's like crickets. You're like, what's going on?
So the second story is I'm in a maximum security prison and I'm speaking with men, and it's very clear that 2 things that every single guy believes they know how to do, but the second you dig a little deeper, you find out, no, just because you're born a man doesn't mean that you know how to fight, doesn't mean you know how to fuck or have sex. So what ends up happening is literally, as I start to get to know these guys deeper, they start to open up that they are kind of between a rock and a hard place.
Okay.
Which is, one, they try and speak to their partner and admit that, something's not working, what it is that she wants. They go, well, she can't really tell me. And if I do that, then what ends up happening to myself, because she will look at the guy as lesser, and especially this was in a Latin, a lot of these guys were Latin cultures, and so they want the guy just to be able to lead it. Okay. So that's the reason why.
No question.
Now the other issue is that if they then were to just posture and pretend like they knew what they were doing, then they could see that things weren't really working, plus then they weren't able to really learn.
Yeah.
So that made it very difficult for them to be able to navigate those 2 of those.
But it sounds like underneath that, there was a desire to have better sex and a desire to understand it and learn it.
There wasn't just a desire. When they would open up, they would literally speak with tears, because these were men that were defined as the definition of toxic masculinity, men in a maximum security prison. And they would be brought to tears because they so deeply wanted to serve the women that they loved, the mothers of their children, the women that they had all these deep feelings for. And so there was just this primal instinct inside them to serve the feminine, but they were stuck, though, not being able to meet her needs because they felt that they couldn't ask or that they would not get the answer.
And so the third story.
Is I'm in Boulder and I'm attending a leadership program.
Sorry.
So what is it that gives you that reaction?
I'll tell you after the story.
Well, you might as well just say it now.
The men have no spines in Boulder.
Well, here's the story. I'm in Boulder. We're at a leadership program, and we're doing a sharing circle at the beginning. And this guy starts to open up about his emotions and starts to express his vulnerability. He starts to cry, and all the women that are in the circle are just going about how beautiful it is to see a man show his emotions, how beautiful it is to see a man being able to be confident enough to show his vulnerability, how much they find that attractive. And they were all praising that in a men's group, that this is a place where men can talk about their struggles, deal with their father and their mother wounds. Well, what I noticed, however, was that none of the women were approaching him sexually. In fact, the only woman that really did approach him was one that said, well, I think as a therapist, I could help you through this. And then the next day she talked about how her therapy got him to get to his next level. He cried some more. Everyone applauded. But at the end of the day, me, who was more of the relatively silent guy, they all were coming to me asking me to go for naked swims, getting my phone number. They're wanting to have sex. And I was like, this here is a big difference between what you all are saying that you find attractive and what you're actually doing with your attraction.
The behavior.
So my experience around men's groups is that, again, they deal a lot with communication as well as expression of emotions. Even when I've talked to some of the biggest men's groups out there, this is where they focus on the lover archetype. But there's no teaching on actually love making and how to have love making make love in a way that grows your relationship and that strengthens it all. So all of these things led up to a point where I'm like, you know what? It's about time that there is a men's community that centers around the topic of the bedroom, around intimacy and relational repatterning, where sex is understood as the energetic focus and driver to then energize the relationship. Because what I've noticed in my own life is that when there is a sexual charge that is built, that actually will direct the relationship and give energy to what otherwise can feel like pulling teeth. And now all of a sudden, the pleasure, the sex is this positively conditioned fuel within us to go forward and have maybe the conversations that are difficult, but all of a sudden they're not difficult because you're super turned on, and now it's interesting to figure out the puzzle between the two of you because it's all motivated by physical, carnal pleasure.
Wow. Well, I'm curious, saying all of that, because there are men's groups that do stuff around sexuality, and we discussed this, and you said, yeah, but it's still like dogma. And I would have to agree, because I've been part of different communities. There's the David Data bots, so the men who learn presence. And then you have your Taoist lover who's convoluted with so many formulas, and so once you're in the bedroom with those guys, it feels like you're again another robot, because there's not a lot of sensuality and emotional dynamism. It's very dry in some ways, but they're very precise in their techniques. And then the tantra guy for me is I don't need to light another candle and eye gaze or get the pussy massage. There's a certain routine that comes with being called the goddess or the Shakti, and it's barf. Stop. So, I mean, for some people, I'm sure it's nice. But what I noticed is it was all it's dogmatic. There wasn't freedom for the individual to tune into their own erotic intelligence and find their unique way. It's so that's what I'm excited about the men's dojo, and why. Well, it's actually called something else, isn't it?
I'm considering calling it the King's Council.
Which I love. And why I love that is a king is a sovereign man who has his own kingdom, who has his own unique expression, who, each kingdom has their culture and their flavor. So I really like that is part of the possible title. And I just find that what's really important here is the opportunity, one, to give men a container That's longer than a night or a book or a video or a weekend or a week-long retreat somewhere, because we both know stuff comes up as life happens. In a 1-year cycle, you can reveal a lot of different patterns, a lot of different things that come up. And it takes time to open and connect and bond. And in opening, connecting, and bonding, that's where the magic can start happening. When people are not held in isolation, they're just like in their own little corner with their shame or their guilt or their unknowing. As you were saying with the prisoners, they're like in this hard place because they can't really come out and they can't really retract. There's nowhere to go. So I'm just very excited that this conversation today, we can look at, well, what is sexual mastery, essentially bedroom mastery, and what does that mean to you specifically, and why is it turning you on? Because I'm turned on right now thinking of all the incredible men that get to have that kind of support and really come forward with their amazing erotic genius.
So what's the question? The
question is like, well, it sounds like you're wanting to bring men into a dojo that's specifically focused on bedroom mastery, like the what's going on in that. And I want to know, like, well, what does that mean exactly? What does that look like?
Well, I'm calling it a council, first of all, because it is more of sort of picturing a round table where we have guys coming together, the ability to share around their stories, their wins, as well as their challenges in the bedroom. But it goes beyond that. So what specifically we'll be covering is the ability to understand the body as a system of pleasure. So this is what we speak about with suction sex.
Yes.
However, there's also understanding the mental arousal patterns of yourself as well as your partner.
Yes.
So this is what I call erotic mind mapping. And it literally gives you a system to figure out, well, what are my partner's psychological triggers that get them to be turned on? Because this should not be an either or thing. And it's typically painted as arousal non-concordance, where you're either turned on in your head or turned on in your body. But these pieces need to work together. That label is a sign of dysfunction, but it doesn't get you closer to functionality. So that's the aspect of the sexual part of the bedroom. Now, it then goes into, we talk about the part on intimacy, which is what are the daily impressions that we make on our partners with our interactions. And we start to understand embodied love and embodied consent, which are big pieces there. And then the last part is the relational repatterning. Which deals with
all of this is awesome. I want to unpack it all. But the one that you just said, because there's so much pain right now around men and sexual shadow and bad behavior, let's say, that even the good men almost like retract because they feel almost responsible or they're taking on the sins of their brothers. And so to have a space where men come together to learn, and specifically you were saying like embodied consent, like what is this piece? We assume that people know these things. We assume that people know. There's an argument, and I think we're going to talk about, I'm going to ask you, like, what kind of men is this for? But there's a general assumption that I bump into fairly regularly, where people are like, this is natural. A man just knows what to do. Why should we ever learn? That's stupid. Like, I don't need to learn from anybody. I already know what I'm doing. And that very attitude is shocking to me, because it's like, well, it's also natural to like hunt, but if you don't know how to hunt well and properly, there's a lot of problems that can happen, or you don't end up eating, or like there's a lot of things that are going on. And so there's skill sets that, yes, are natural. You know, of course, sex is part of our evolution, but I can't say that being a good lover and understanding how sex can actually bring all of your life up, even in work and in other relations, like it can really bring energy and goodness up. So I love this idea that you are not only teaching the bedroom, like actual skills, like, well, how do bodies work together, and how do you work with this particular body, and how do you like invite more pleasure to come forward and more surrender and more beauty to emerge. but also really that you said something very important. You said the impression that we leave upon each other throughout the day, which I think is really huge, because I think a lot of times I see couples, the tone of voice they use with each other sucks. How they interact, or their choice of not even being aware. And the big one is the transition, say, between work and home, and not being aware of that. So one of the big complaints that a lot of women bring to me is like, yeah, my guy comes home and he just has to dump his day, and it's the biggest turn off. And I deal with it because I know it's important to him, but it does not make me want to have sex with him. And so there's this thing where there's a lack of understanding that coming home and dumping all your stress of your day onto your partner, who might have originally been really excited for you to come back and connect with you. So these pieces, like that, the imprint. So then the woman gets this imprint of, ugh, I'm not going to enjoy him coming home, because the first hour is just always this stupidity about what didn't work out at work. It's just a general, comment here. But I do think having this kind of knowledge, it's like the common sense of the erotic. And I just don't see any common sense of the erotic being taught anywhere, being shared or talked about anywhere. I see a lot of weird ideas around the erotic being shared, and then people attempting to emulate that, but they're very unnatural. So I really love that. I love that part a lot.
I believe that most people are learning techniques if it's going to come to sex, and those techniques are one-sided. And what I mean by one-sided is that it is what the guy is doing, or frankly, what the one person, even the advice to women is what that one person is doing to the other person.
Yes.
There is nothing in terms of understanding a sexual interaction as a system. So you're talking like with the Taoist practices, and a very common one you'll hear spouted all the time is, you do 1 shallow thrust or 10 shallow thrusts, and then you go to 9 shallow thrusts and 1 deep thrust, and then 8 shallow thrusts, and then 2 deep, and then you do that until you've kind of like, I guess you're completed, and maybe at that time the sexual event ends, or you start it over again, Maybe you do it backwards the other way if you want to get really fancy.
You do.
So this, however, though, is still what one body is doing to the other body. And this is a crucial difference here, is that with me, you're going to be learning a system. You're going to be understanding in that system, as we said, the body, the psyche, the communication, the attachment patterns, and how those get repatterned. And when you start to understand things systematically, you can see where the labels for dysfunction are, but you then start to intuit. You start to understand common sense. You actually increase your bedroom IQ as well as relational and communication IQ to then have a comprehensively different experience in your partnership and in the sexual experience that you have. And you don't start thinking, okay, well, there's this kind of sex and there's that kind of sex, and then this is me dressing up as a dom, this is me throwing on the role now of, the romantic or whatever else it might be, but how it all fits together, so that way then you can be in the moment and have the answers come to you intuitively in a way that's common sense, and not from up here, but from a felt state.
There's another layer of bedroom mastery that I think is beautiful that Section 6 addresses, that I'd love to, I'm imagining this is part of the program, but that's why I'm bringing it up. And it's this whole idea of the adaptive giver and the active receiver. And so I imagine those will be part of it, but why would one want to learn about the active receiver bit?
Most of you men believe the reason that you are a great lover is because of some attribute that is inherent about yourself. The truth is that the greatest lovers, their strongest attribute is the attributes that they can bring out in the other person.
Okay.
So the active receiver is the more you can facilitate your partner to let go of shame, to be able to release pain, the ability to awaken from boredom, the ability to let go of fear and actually step into their joy, find a sense of calmness and confidence in themselves, to actually find attraction and turn on for life and develop that curiosity of adventure without, the risk of being shamed. And then if you can get them to truly move that into their body, meaning that they're moving their body, they're activating their pelvic floor, they're bringing out their voice, the more that you can give them the permission to do that, the more amazing you will become as a lover. And again, it's not so much what you are just doing in isolation from the other person, because that's just a performance. And frankly, they could have a dildo or a vibrator for that. The beauty of what you can do, though, is to open them up. And then whatever you bring to meet them there is going to go so much more deep than if you were just doing this on your own, trying to focus only on your techniques, as opposed to learning how to attune what you're doing, adapting to them, and then guiding them into surrender. Most people teach woman needs to surrender, guy needs to be dominant. What ends up happening is the woman ends up being passive and the guy ends up being domineering.
Yeah, exactly. I think that one skill set would also solve the problem of a guy going, getting the girl, going on the date, taking her home. If he understood and had confidence in, it doesn't matter who this person is. I don't know anything about them, so I'm in the discovery process. Or a guy who's had a partner for a very long time and they kind of have this routine sex, suddenly recognizing, well, there's actually way more to both of us than routine sex, and having the skill set to evoke the beauty and the mystery to come out. I think that's a really powerful skill set that I also don't see.
Well, I'm going to have you hold this teacup here for a second, because I think you made me a beautiful tea today.
Yes.
And there were two things that I think are so important, and this is just so random, but also serendipity here. One is your deep inner self is your brightest light.
Yeah.
And the other is the unknown has to be trusted.
Okay.
Now, thank you very much for that. I find most people will avoid the unknown because it makes them feel ignorant. Whereas mastery dives into the unknown to discover that which is yet to be found.
The thing is, once you understand that you have an erotic intelligence and you understand how to tune into it and dance with it, then the unknown becomes your favorite place, because you're like, ooh, what am I going to discover today? Because it's no longer a place of fear or terror or, inhibition. Because you already trust yourself. You're like, it doesn't matter what shows up because I'm with me and I'm awesome and I can handle whatever's going to emerge today. And so I think that's a huge confidence builder. And in the male body, confidence building looks like really healthy testosterone. So it's a good thing. I'm curious though, because I brought it up earlier, and it is a complaint that I hear from females who are so women want to learn about sex. They're really they just want to dive in. They want to learn everything. They want to bring their partners in. And inevitably, I think at least 50% of the time, it seems like the partner's like, oh no, I don't want to learn. I don't need to learn. This is a natural thing. So why do men need to train? Not just why, they could train, but actually why is it important to their growth as a human being?
Well, like anything, if you want to get better at it, then you need to train. You need to be able to have feedback on what you're doing and feedback that's supportive. A lot of guys are going to be resistant. One, because it positions them in a place of feeling like they're not the leader. And their female partner does want them to lead.
Yeah.
So it's hard to reconcile that. In fact, it's often difficult for the woman as well. I mean, you will typically see woman goes to a dance club, she has no experience, and the guy dances her lights out, she feels incredible, and eventually she starts to learn.
Yes.
For the guys, though, it can be difficult. Well, so what are they going to do? They're either going to get led by a guy, or they have to find a woman that's willing to do the leading, which then means all the steps are backwards.
Yeah.
So that can be a very big challenge. That being said, what I have consistently seen is that when men learn with me, they are not learning a step-by-step, here's what I'm going to do, and they lose creativity.
Yeah.
Instead, they're like, Aaron, oh my God, the thing you taught me, I did this little thing with this person because I felt this and this is what happened, and she was blown away. And now I'm representing Ireland, or now she believes all the best lovers are coming out of Denmark, or all the best lovers are coming out of Germany, or England, or the US, or Brazil, or, wherever I've been teaching.
Yeah.
And these different guys are from all over the world. And now they discover that, it's like I was reading from the T, that it is themselves that can be expressed through a system that is that brightest light.
Yes.
And they don't have to be memorizing things.
Yes.
Instead, they feel a confidence because they can handle any situation that is thrown at them, whether it's pain, whether it's numbness, whether it's emotional turmoil, they got it. And in fact, they start to even welcome it because they learn that where there can be difficulties, there is often, once that has been unlocked, the greatest pleasures possible.
Ooh, sounds fun. Now, you have worked with hundreds of men, and as you said, in many countries around the world, and now even online, it's more like hundreds of thousands because of the different platforms that you've been teaching on. So, which type of guy is this men's dojo, the King's Council? Like, who would it serve best?
I mean, it's for any person that has a penis. And anyone that wants to learn how to use it, as well as their fingers, as well as their mouth, as well as their psyche. And I literally see people coming from all spectrums. So here's a classic one, person who is a business magnate, has sort of checked everything off of the bucket list, can buy whatever they want, but then will get a negative feedback from a partner and then find out that all the partners actually had negative feedback about them. And they've worked themselves so hard that they have literally learned to ignore their body to pull those long hours. And so they are emotionally numb, they are sexually inept, and they are relationally incapable of attuning to their partner.
Yeah.
So that spells a big disaster.
I think there's I saw a lot of those type of guys as well.
Completely. Well, I mean, this is then how men are set up to succeed. It's like, hey, go out, put in the hard work, do the time with that, get the finances, and then build the family. But in doing that, they shut off parts of themselves that are necessary for maintaining the relationship. So that's just one type.
One type. Who else?
Well, then you have the other one, which I would call something more around the hopeless romantic.
Okay.
And they don't have to always be an artist, but you can see that a lot of times with an artist who's, extremely passionate, like falls deeply in love. This is one that a lot of guys, and this kind of goes across the board, they had this deeply romantic side of them when they were young.
Yeah.
They got their heart broken, and either they've continued to get their heart broken, or they go, oh, you know what? Forget that. I'm just going to be an asshole because if I show my emotions, it gets broken. So I'm going to do the opposite.
Okay.
So those two types sometimes lead together. The business magnate plus the hopeless romantic turned business magnate. There's a TV show, How I Met Your Mother, and Barney is exactly that. He was like this hippie guy, played the guitar, got his heart broken by a girl who, they're getting ready to get engaged or something, and this business guy comes in and just takes her away, and then he actually goes to the guy and says, hey, help me, what did you do? And he's like, you need to get a suit. And so he's always suiting up, and he's literally just plays women throughout the rest of the seasons and knows how to get them in bed. So it's a hilarious show. Very interesting character, and that shows those two types there.
And I'm sure there's other
completely
other types of guys that come along. What about the age range?
Well, I want to talk about another type. Yeah. Then there's this type that's very much a sex nerd. They're very curious. I mean, these will a lot of times be an actual nerd, like maybe a scientist or a bookworm or just somebody that really dives deep into a topic. And so they consider themselves in some sense like a sexual connoisseur.
Okay.
And they have this drive to really learn more about this. However, they also don't want the bullshit woo-woo stuff.
Yeah.
They want to know, like, well, how do I actually penetrate? How do I use my fingers? How do I use my mouth? How do I actually engage in sex in a way that is like deeply about her pleasure? And the flaw that can happen there is that they almost forget or ignore their own pleasure. But the difficulty they deal with is, well, the information out there is so inconsistent, or they're trying to study pornography, which is the one place that they're kind of getting to see sex. And that's like asking an actor for life advice. It's not really going to teach you what it is that you can do for sensation versus what you can do as a performance for a camera.
Amazing. Well, it sounds like there's it's...
As I said, you have a penis,
guys,
you want to learn how to use it? There you go.
Really, to access your erotic intelligence, or what I called earlier the erotic genius, to feel a natural confidence, but also then to have camaraderie, to have to heal a little bit the silence around this topic, to heal a little bit. I think it's harder for men to share in this realm. Like for women, when they come together in a group, it just seems a lot easier. So
this, for the reasons we've mentioned before, but what you've just said though about the shame, that would be another type, is you have men who are very sexual. They've either maybe had a sex with a lot of women, one time, doing it the same way. Typically they've also have a big history of pornography, and then some form of like either alcohol or substance abuse. And they're always having sex from that perspective. And when they then meet a partner and they're like, you know what? I'm actually cutting these parts of my life out. I'm cutting out porn. The guy's like, I want to cut out porn. The guy says, I want to be able to cut out the substance abuse. I want to start to have something a little bit deeper than the shag where I've picked someone up at a bar. And then they get into a relationship and all of a sudden they go, Aaron, my cock's not working. And that's very difficult to first come forward and say that. Yeah. But then also to dig into a deeper well of desire that exists inside them than, the hormonal urge to have sex with the nicest butt that you see in the moment versus the one that you're going to spend a lifetime investing in.
I think there's also, and this isn't categorized to a certain type, but there's also men who are suffering sexually. There are issues with either they can't last as long as they would like, just more being a choice. So, or they can't come whenever they want, or maybe they don't feel anything. I mean, we had a client who just didn't feel a thing until the moment he would literally ejaculate, and then he would feel it like for 2 seconds, and that was his moment of feeling something, which was making him a little bit of a sex addict to just try and get to that place, and he wanted to repeatedly do that, but it was having huge wear and tear on his body and his psyche, and I believe his heart. So there's also, for guys, if you have these things that are happening in your body, it's quite remarkable how many of our clients have said, well, I've gotten off the drugs, the Viagra or Cialis. I no longer use, whatever toys or penis pumps or all the things that we're kind of seeing that men are being sold, because they're starting to understand their body. They start to understand blood flow. So I'd love you, if you're open, what are some of the foundational pieces that are going to be part of this King's Council?
Well, I want to address some of these dysfunctions that you mentioned, because a lot of guys are dealing with, when it comes to physical problems, as well as mental problems too, is you have anxiety, which is a big killer. And then you also have just the physical conditions that are there. Maybe it's their hormones, it's their body. So we work with a multidisciplinary group of the world's greatest functional doctors, as well as therapists. So that way then those areas get addressed, but they're with specialists who appreciate the importance of
pleasure.
the erotic, of pleasure, and they also are very familiar with the work that I'm doing.
Yes.
So that way then we can help guys deal on all levels with the basic issues, which is like struggling to get it up, struggling to keep it up, struggling to come too soon, struggling not to come at all. It's kind of like they get hit from every angle, because women, they can be quite unforgiving sometimes when it comes to a guy's body. They're like, no, you should be able to get an erection the second that before I take my clothes off. It should already be hard. It should stay hard the entire time, and it should get off before I get bored.
Yeah.
But not too soon before I have my pleasure.
And again,
so then the guy gets into this place of like performance.
And it's an unreasonable ask from women, usually based because they also watching porn. And so what they're seeing is a scenario where the cock's already hard. What they're seeing is a scenario where it's not very long anyway, so the hardness lasts the whole time. And what they're seeing is a woman screaming with ecstasy and pleasure because he's literally skilled enough to do, which is all fake. But that's the imprint of what sex should look like and feel like for a lot of people. And so what's really beautiful, I think, in the way that you have many, so are you including all your different programs?
So how this works is throughout the year, there are going to be there are already courses out there. Most people don't even know all the courses that I've created. And there are courses that are strictly around penetrative sex that involves you and your partner. Then there's also a course that if you don't have any time for training, you are going out on a date right away that night. What can you immediately put in? Understanding her anatomy, your finger skills, your mouth skills, and your hand skills, where it's focusing on being able to, by getting her to be an active receiver, bring her tremendous amounts of pleasure. In fact, that course is called Bring Her to God.
Woo!
And the other one is called 9 Dates or 9 Naughty Nights, which is literally in like 9 dates, you can start to be having like a suction sex 101, which is going to be a whole other level and experience of sex. And that's one of our courses that is actually protocols that's been studied clinically with tremendous results.
Yes.
We also then have the mouth magic course, which is a suction sex 2.0. Again, using all of the same principles. Maybe we could even talk about what those principles are that are throughout all of these courses, but it's how do you then use your mouth in a way to be able to get her to be an active receiver, where it's also guiding her to become more empowered in it. And the big one is that your one point of contact isn't just your mouth and her body. And it's a series of games that you get to play, which teach you so much to have you be communicating and getting more information.
I always like the R&R part of your creations.
The R&D, the research and development. Why is that?
Well, because I get the benefit of you exploring, going, okay, how would I like teach this and translate this so that others can like have it? So you definitely, like, when you're creating something, I'm saying this because Aaron doesn't teach anything that isn't embodied, and that he hasn't either experimented, at least with me, or from his vast past.
I think with the mouth magic one, that was one I just put together from the past, and then you just got to have the benefits of like, well, what is the course like? I'm like, well, here we go. Let's play some of these games.
And then I was like, I want some fingers. So then what happened?
So then now there is a finger fun and manual magic.
Yeah.
This is such an important skill for guys to learn how to use their hands to be able to awaken any parts of numbness in a woman's body, which, by the way, is the biggest plague that this world has. It's not pain, it is numbness, because you can't feel numbness. Therefore, we don't know that it's there and it exists. And this then limits our ability, and it's what we use to actually cover up past pains. So not only does it limit our pleasure, but it also erases the memories of things that were bad, so then we don't even get a chance to address them, again, limiting our pleasure. The other part that course does is being able to then transform the pain there into places of pleasure, because once the numbness wakes up, then there's like, oh, I'm feeling the pain that's there. But then once that pain releases, these are often the places where the biggest resources of pleasure are laying dormant and hidden.
I think I could speak to that. Because occasionally I have an area that's uncomfortable for whatever reason. Maybe I worked out funny or whatever. And then I'll say, that doesn't feel so great. And then you won't shy away. And that's a skill, I think, if men really understood that, to encourage their partner to be honest about their experience in the moment, to get direct feedback, and then not shy away when it's an ow or I don't feel anything, but actually lean in and have the skills to then evoke a sensation or transform a painful one into a pleasurable one. Because I've noticed you don't shy away, you don't suddenly switch into doing something else, you actually stay, and like how you do it is pretty awesome. But very quickly I move from something not feeling nice to something feeling very orgasmic, and that's been on repeat. Like, so it's something now that I trust in you as a behavior, which then allows me to be even more honest about my experience and be like scanning myself and like, oh, look, this is happening here, this is happening there, and having more communication. So it builds trust over a longer period of time.
It also builds a lot of confidence that then allows guys to be able to deal with one of the biggest things that they do not have confidence around, which is how do you deal with the woman's psyche? How do you deal with the different emotions that come up? So if you can stay present when there is either pain or numbness and learn to transform that, then you're also already laying in the skills for being able to stay present with a woman's anger, which is normally complemented with the pain, with a woman's boredom, which is normally complemented with numbness, as well as the fear and the anxiety and the blame and the shame and the guilt and the disgust. When you can stay present with that and then be able to transform those and transmute them into positive emotions, positive experiences, now a lot of the breaks that a woman will have to go into her fantasies and the different types of mental arousal that she already naturally has, or if she's like, I don't have any fantasies at all, that's normally a sign that she's numb and bored physically. And once you then start to waken that up, well, the emotions are going to come.
Or she's lying.
And you need to be able to, well, yeah, because she, again, doesn't feel the level of trust to do that. So once you can deal with those emotions, though, that are going to come up when the fantasies get expressed, because it's like, oh, am I going to get judged one way or another? Or am I going to judge myself for wanting this? Well, when you as a person are able to handle that in yourself, handle that with a partner, that opens up what we refer to as the erotic landscape, which then gets you into then, well, how do you actually then start to deal with intimacy and understanding the cycle of love, not as just a feeling, but something as an action that you do and a state of being, which has these beautiful cycles of the ability to get your partner to truly express their truth, the ability to respond to that truth, which is responsibility, which then opens up deeper levels of trust in the relationship. And that's what then lets you have deeper places of celebration, whether it's long-term goals or in the moment, hot sex, beautiful orgasms with all kinds of erotic talk and physical releases of pleasure. That's the celebration that then allows for deeper statements of truth, responsibility, trust, and it starts to cycle there of what intimacy really is.
I want to point out here, because this is a lot like emotional stuff. So I feel that also in the King's Council, what's being invited, which is super crucial, because this is something I've talked about my whole career. If you build the sexual pillar in yourself and it becomes vibrant and strong, but you do not address the emotional pillar, you're going to get skewed and off, and it's going to generate a lot of problems at some point, or vice versa. You're only focused on all the intimacy, emotional pieces, but you don't develop sexually. There also at some point becomes a problem. They need to kind of grow together. They may not have the exact same rhythm, but there's a growth. And what I've noticed, and I'm 100% certain you'll be addressing this throughout the year, is this invitation into emotional maturity. This invitation, like, if you have this much sexual power, anything in your being that's not yet resolved or been like appreciated, or as you said, you used the word transmute, which I think is important, because anywhere there's little locked places that we hold ourselves, when you have a huge amount of sexual power, it's going to strike and hit those places in the psyche in such a way that it's almost, you feel like you're going crazy.
Yep.
And so I have seen this time and time again happen, which is why I like to pace people in a very particular way. So I'm just curious, I think in the year long, it's going to have a natural cadence that allows for both of those pillars to be growing. I also feel like when men, when there's a combination of bedroom arts with intimacy, with like all the pieces that you're saying, the relational thing, now you have a holistic experience versus just developing in one side and then this is huge gaping hole in the other.
Well, you really need the three pillars. You need the aspect of the psyche and the body for the sex. You need to have an understanding of communication, which isn't just verbal communication, but the ability, and I don't know if you can hear the cicadas coming in, speaking of communication.
They're getting excited.
Little shaman shakers there. They're voicing out themselves as well. We'll have to see if you can hear it in the recording. But the ability to have communication that happens in the bedroom that's not verbal, but either vocal, meaning the tones and sounds that are allowed to come out, but also too from an embodied place, the ability to signal with hands and feet, because you don't, when you're dancing, you're not saying, okay, step this way. Okay, I'm going to spin you now. What do you think about this?
You need to be able to read the body.
You need to be able to read the body. You need to be able to lead the body. You need to be able to follow the body. And that's where the active receiver and adaptive giver come together in a very real way. And so what does love look like when it's embodied in love making? What does truth then look like during the act of sex? What is responsibility in the act of sex? What is trust in the act of sex? And what is celebration? So these are deep questions in that second pillar. And when you have this third pillar now, which brings it all together, is how do you start to, whether you are the type who avoids the different types of emotions or avoids physical intimacy or, the erotic mind, or you're the type that is anxious about it, is how do you become more secure and creating secure attachment patterns that are going to both mature yourself relationally as well as your partner. And what this creates is the ability to literally craft the type of partnership you want. And maybe that partnership is a consensual, hey, we're just going to have a really hot one night stand, but it's going to be amazing. Or, you know what? We're going to have a romance. We're going to dive into the deep end of love.
Like a summer
fling. For a summer fling. And then that's going to be it. But we have this clear, like as you say, beginning, middle, and end. Yeah. Or maybe it becomes a lifetime partnership. And sometimes you don't always have to be able to decide that ahead. You can literally feel your way through it, but you're doing it not from a place of idealization and imagination and shoulds and coulds, and this is, how things need to go, but from a felt state of figuring out not just what you desire in your body, but what is that match for that person at that time in their life and yours, and allowing that emotional, relational third to form and become whatever it is to be, and not just following some cultural narrative.
I think that's what I love about us. That the journey of knowing you first as a colleague of work, eventually becoming friends, and then making a choice to deepen that friendship and to connect and work and travel. Like, there was some evolutions there, but I never felt like either one of us was like, this is how it needs to look and be. And I still feel that way today. I still feel like we wake up and we're like, how do we want to create this day together and separately, because we have our own uniqueness. And so I think having people understand, listen, the more you can have healthy relations, the more we start to create stability socially. And this world right now, with all the craziness and the chaos, we need stability. And the first pillar of stability is with ourselves. So you do have a solo practice journey that's going to be part of The King
So that's the
Council.
other program is YAFAB.
Yeah.
And this is a very important distinction because there's so many men out there that when it comes to sexual mastery, it's about abstinence. It's about semen retention. It's about not coming too soon. It's about not becoming too emotional. And the key difference here is that embrace your emotions, embrace your sexual potency, and learn how to harness it, not negate it, and then use that energy in all other aspects of your life. It's the difference between I'm going to simply not eat food in order to demonstrate my strength versus I am going to eat in a way that fuels my training to then become stronger.
Yeah.
And so as opposed to the art of denial, it is the art of pacing and the art of actually increasing your pleasure capacity. So instead of NoFap, which means no self-pleasure as a discipline, it's YAFAP.
Yeah.
How do you actually take your masturbatory, self-pleasuring, whatever you want to call it, practices so that you actually can feel more, be able to last as long as you choose, while then also boosting your capacity for feeling more pleasure and giving more pleasure. So you, in and of yourself, can literally adapt your own nervous system to be able to become a great lover if you don't have a partner yet, but you can also do it with a partner.
Yeah.
And so this is a really key foundational piece to understanding, you want to show up for 9 dates. Well, here's the solo practice you can do on your own long term. But then you have the Bringer to God, the manual, the finger fun and manual magic, as well as the mouth magic course, as well as then Awaken the Sensual Woman, which we'll be looking at from the perspective of a guy. How do you take away the pain and the numbness? But then start to actually develop your own solo practice, because it makes such a difference when you are no longer needing to come to the partner and depend on them for your pleasure. Instead, you can charge yourself up, create a natural magnetism, which goes beyond just a polarity. I'm trying to be masculine here and she needs to be feminine. It's like, no. Embrace both sides of yourself, become truly magnetic, boost your pleasure capacity, and see how the world responds to you. And guys talk so much about the shift that they notice and how the world comes to them, how the world starts to serve them when they build this sexual potency inside themselves.
I want to address that in a second, but first I just want to say, for those who are partnered who would be in this council, there's going to be a lot of benefits to your partner. But what I like about the solo practice, yes, there's a whole series that you just do on your own, which is very important. It's so important to know your own body in this way and to open up. You have so much capacity and just activate that capacity. But then once you've done that, you can actually include your partner, which we have found partners love to be supportive of that solo practice. They oh yeah, I get to do this every day. This is awesome.
The guy's like, wait, all I had to do is approach you as my teammate around my sexual training, and now all of a sudden I'm getting blowjobs and sex multiple times a day, every day, for at least 21 days.
Or longer once you get into it.
Exactly.
So I wanted to then, what does it look like when men have been through this experience, and just give us kind of an idea of what's possible.
One of the biggest shifts is that sex, as opposed to being a weakness, becomes a strength. If you watch most movies, the hero, if it's a male, they at some point will get seduced by a woman, they will lose their sexual power, and this is where they can then be manipulated, sexually, emotionally. As opposed to this having this be a true strength, a gift that they can bring to a partnership, a place of confidence, as opposed to sexual tension being that thing you try and discharge. You actually learn how to master it, harness it, build it, and then use that as an energy in the bedroom, in your workout, in the boardroom, in your relationship, in all aspects of your life, the same way you do education, food, and exercise.
Okay.
And this is a massive shift around how they begin to have the intentionality or the intentions they bring to the sexual arena with themselves, with their partner. And they start to understand how it impacts the whole world. The other piece is once they have learned to build a sexual energy around it, now they become quite free in their ability to speak around it, the ability to communicate around it. They have a certain ease in themselves that is no longer either shying away or going to like puff up their chest and try and posture.
Yeah.
And that confidence can be felt throughout all of their relationships.
I think in some ways, our clients many times, by the time they kind of come to a cycle of completion, let's say, because many of them just do repeat and kind of go next level, but that initial cycle of completion, there's often this like, I had no idea that I would be here, and I'm very grateful that I am here, but I would not know how to describe what here is so that my past self would actually understand where I'm standing today. And but I'm so happy that I made the journey anyways.
Well, that's literally the definition of metamorphosis.
Yeah.
Guys go through a complete metamorphosis of how they look at themselves, how they are also perceived, and how they act and move through the world. There is normally also a big shift in either shame or confidence in their own body image, and they, at the base, learn, I am not just enough, I am more than enough. And this is something that I can continue to cultivate. My sexuality is not predetermined by the size of my cock or by my height.
Yeah.
Or
even
my
age,
intelligence
or
or age or bank. Yeah. Any of these type of external things, they realize they have a deep potency that will help them achieve all these other things. But at the same time, what they get valued for and what they start to value themselves has a lot more to do with their essence and who they are, and not just one single performance in the bed, but their ability to remain connected to themselves, connect to others, and then literally fuel the fire of passion and eros in all aspects of their life and for those around them.
I think what excites me about this too is because there's so much dissonance in the world around men and sexuality, that to me this is a solution. It's like we shouldn't avoid the topic. We need to turn toward it and wisely look at it and investigate it and develop it so that men actually mature and grow and become even more amazing, extraordinary beings, which I think they already are, but they just sometimes that's untapped, and tap into it and then bring that out and become like amazing partners and fathers and brothers and friends and leaders and whatever else that they are, the roles that they play in the world.
There is another type of man that we didn't mention before, and I think is particularly pertinent to this part of the conversation, and that is a good guy who has not become just kind, but they've become a nice guy.
Okay.
And that's because they have started to understand, well, the only way for me to not be considered a sexual predator is that I need to be safe. And then by safe, it also then means rather neutered. And so you notice men, when they've gone through this shift, all of a sudden they realize that their cock, their heart, their brain, their intellect, all of these things, their spirit are not separate.
Yeah.
Spirituality, emotions, psyche, sexual drive, the physical carnal side of themselves, they all operate together. And when they feel secure in themselves, they can navigate any situation. All of a sudden, they can show up in a way that shifts them from being viewed as predator to not just being protector, but being an empower of the future generations of other men, but also for the women who are blessed to have them in their lives.
Do you know where you see this in nature? And you see it in elephants. So the bull elephant, the mature male is massive.
Yes.
I mean, the tusks on those things are like many feet long. They're huge. And so, so these elephants, these big mature males, they were targeted by poachers.
Yeah.
And almost all the big, sexually mature, life mature males disappeared. And then what started happening to the population of elephants is you have these gangster youngsters that started actually not only bothering humans and other creatures, but even traumatizing their own communities. And so very problematic. And so for men to behave better, young men with a lot of testosterone, not a lot of training, not a lot of emotional, and they have all this media that's saying all these things, and so they're hooking on to whatever pieces they're hooking on to, not having the guidance of an initiated, mature, and super sexually potent male. Because here's what happens. The bull, who's the mature bull, when the young ones go into must, which is kind of a testosterone crazy moment, they will misbehave hugely. But if there's a mature bull, it will come and tell, like, essentially, like, behaviorally affect the young one to calm down and to be able to handle this burst of intense testosterone that makes them want to fuck everything and kill everything. And then it regulates the young one, and then the young one starts to learn how to handle what it means to be male and potent in a way that actually works for the herd and works for the environment. And so I feel like that's missing in our society, and I'm very excited that you're calling out the kings to step forward and to gather and to share wisdom amongst themselves, as well as to learn and grow and become even more brilliant human beings.
If there's no precedence, a prince will never become a king. And a prince will only then think of ruling a kingdom as opposed to a king who serves that kingdom and allows the kingdom then to serve the greater vision of the society. And a key aspect of helping young men develop sexual maturity, which doesn't come with pubes, that is puberty, which is reproductive maturity. Sexual maturity comes when you are able to drive your hormones and not just have your hormones drive you. And in order for a young man to be able to understand that, they need a precedent and they need an example. So you fathers out there, if you care about the future of the children that you have, whether it's a daughter or a son, or the sons or daughters that you hope to have, then you better for sure go ahead and begin to develop your sexual maturity, because that is what is going to orient your son how to behave, as well as then your daughters how to behave when it comes to choosing a partner, when it comes to treating a partner, so that they can have the same relational success that you will begin to have.
That's the gift my father gave me. Absolutely. And it's a gift that when I meet sexually mature men, those bull elephants of the herd, just how powerful and impactful and necessary they are. So there isn't a lot of that right now. So this is literally the leading edge. It's the new generation of men who are like, we've had enough. We're stepping into full power. We're doing it consciously. We're doing it in community. We're doing it to uplift everyone, ourselves and everyone. And that I find very horny. I really do. I think it's super horny.
That's another type of male that's attracted to this as well, is the optimizer. You have people that are developing themselves in biohacking. You've had people that have been developing themselves, not just by going to school and educating, but now they're, with the internet and all the possibilities, they're literally becoming Renaissance men, learning all kinds of different crafts and really developing that aspect of themselves. Then you have those who are developing themselves with physical fitness, with the way that they eat. I mean, just all aspects of life.
And get back to like the ones who are like, they're lumberjacking, they're like hunting again, they're like farming
out into
again.
Nature.
Yeah.
Well, this, however, is, if not the final frontier, it is definitely the next frontier in personal development, is understanding that your sexual potency, that pleasure, all the health benefits, relational benefits during the time of COVID when everyone was locked down. They noticed those that had the best psychological, physical, and relational health were those that remained sexually active. And if you look at other studies in terms of being able to be sexual with your partner to create relational satisfaction, you need to have these skills. And it depends on a partner being able to receive the pleasure with great sensation. And then secondly, that the partner is able to also perform with competence. And if you can have those two factors, adaptive giver, active receiver, then you develop a huge charge. And read any of Brody's papers, Brody, where it's literally just a list of the health benefits, the psychological benefits, the relational benefits, specifically that he brings to the point of penis to vagina intercourse. And we are taught that men are one way, women are another way, their anatomies are completely different, but it's as if they're in opposition to each other is what's being taught. The truth is that they are beautiful complements. And it's not just a male-female issue. We've also coached all kinds of couples that from all sexual orientations. It's a penetrator and being penetrated understanding of penetration that causes this, and understanding that penetration is bidirectional, empowers both sides, and the bodies truly do complement one another in a way that as much energy that you can discover and generate inside yourselves when the two become one, which now gets into the spiritual and metaphysical aspects of sex and reaching into these non-dualistic states with a partner, it supercharges the relationship. You then start to take that energy and you have mutual goals that you start to accomplish above and beyond what you ever thought you would do on your own or even thought you could do in a partnership. So you literally take an understanding of how do you create mutual pleasure, how do you have shared communication, and then how do you accomplish goals together in a way that then the sex, the intimacy, and the relational attachment patterns start to drive each other and create a synergy that is tremendously important. And this happens not again in isolated pockets of learning a course or a lesson here, which help you tremendously, and we've seen, but then that last bit is actually coming together and hearing other men's stories and having the community aspect of it. So that's why I'm formally now starting something that has already been started and bringing together this King's Council so that men can not just step into it with words and posturing, but actually embody it in their life, with their wives, with their girlfriends, in their relationships, for their kids, and in all aspects of society.
Well, just before, I would love a few details. So I think the King's Council, there's a community aspect, but everyone's from everywhere in the world. So what does that look like? How do you gather?
Well, we gather twice a month, and that is going to probably be the first and the third week of every month.
But that's on Zoom or in person?
And that will be online. We have the Embodied Love University platform, which is designed specifically for this, so people can, in a closed community, be able to have that security to talk and share with each other. We meet online as a group. You get to draw on my knowledge. You get to share each other's learnings. You also have access to all of these premium courses, which normally you'd have to get separately and find in different places. They're all right there for you. We will be going through, over a year period, all of these different aspects of true sexual mastery that we've just covered. And those pieces will be the homework. So that way when we talk, you can actually exercise it in yourself with your partner. And then we're going to have lots of other things. Well, I have some guests, such as yourself, that will come on every so often. We'll be inviting other people on. We have a tremendous network of doctors, of therapists, of people who are involved in politics, but to have them come and speak to you and hear those perspectives and be able to share all around that central locus point of sexual mastery gives a new flavor to every single conversation that you've had, where you get to ask the questions that maybe you haven't dared to ask before, or you haven't even thought of asking yet. And that then will allow you to even then sometimes we'll have partners come in, because people, whether you're single or partnered, you want to hear, well, what are the other person's partners saying? And so we will have a space to be able to do that. And it is primarily online, but I'm also considering just now, as we're getting ready to head into South Africa and we're going to be doing a safari, you've invited me with your women to actually come on this safari, because I'm going to be with the Zulu guides and starting to get men in nature. And again, I always embody something before I bring it out. So I want to have that experience to then look at like, well, how do we then bring men out into the wild? How do we bring men to all these different optimization clinics that we've learned with functional wellness medicine and what that's done for my body, so that way then you're being supported psychologically, physically, and by the earth itself, as well as then driving that force from the bedroom and out.
And will there be opportunities also to work one-on-one with you within that time frame?
Well, during that time, you can, of course, make yourself, you can access whatever you want in the university, whether that is then personal coaching, online, just one-on-one with me as opposed to in the group. Then you also have the opportunity that literally Dr. Saida and myself, or just myself, or sometimes just Dr. Saida, will be able to literally fly out, or you fly in to work with your partner, to work with the two of you together, work with you by yourself. So there's nothing like doing things in person. You also will be some of the first to hear about any types of workshops that we're doing. And really the sky is the limit here. And as you develop a history on this platform, you'll be able to see the tracked growth that you're having. And as you reach out to other professionals, you will be able to make that information available to them as well. So that way you have access to a multidisciplinary approach to this part of your life that is very sex and pleasure positive.
Okay. Well, how do people join?
Well, you simply are going to reach out. We're going to be reaching out to you there. If you're not on the platform yet, please go check it out. That way then you can just sign up for it. However, though, this is going to be a little bit more bespoke and custom crafted. So there is an application process for that.
Okay. So we'll include that with this episode. Everywhere this episode is posted, there will be a link to that.
Yep. So we have a team of men who have gone through the programs themselves that are going to be doing basically an assessment and intake call with you. So that way then you can figure out, well, what really is the best path? Because there are so many ways that you can be active in this. But this is really for those of you who are truly dedicated to developing a level of sexual intimacy and relational mastery. And by the way, if you're listening to this episode and you haven't heard the erotic insert where we put into practice everything that we talk about, that means you are getting the free version of this podcast and joining the next level of Explore from Playful Explore, which is a free account. Everyone can get this.
To a
Curious Explore, $9.97 a month. You then are able to start to hear what the embodiment of this is. And that is where you get access to the membership portion of this podcast. And it's only available on the platform before. And that's that first step before you then go into a slightly larger community where then you'll see men's group things on a lower level. There's also the whole love lab, but then finally, as this last piece here, the King's Council and accessing the higher levels of coaching where you truly get to dive into mastery.
Yeah. I don't think it's a last piece. I think it's an awesome
that's
part of
that's a gate opener.
The gate opener adventure, but I do think it's really amazing. And if no matter when you're listening to this, my understanding is that this group isn't a particular start date that people can join at any part, and then you'll just be brought into that community, and there's an integration at the beginning. The community members will support you, but
I have guys that have been learning these things for years. They develop levels of mastery, and the first level of developing mastery is understanding that there's always more levels of mastery that you can go into. It's like If you are a true physicist and you're discovering the cosmos, as you answer more questions, you discover even more questions than you started off with. But it's from a place of pleasure and excitement because that's the adventure. So we will have this material covered over a year period. You can start wherever because, again, what you're learning is a system. It doesn't matter where you end up starting. Jump in now. And then you'll just continue to come back. And every single year that you do this, you're going to go, whoa, I didn't even realize this level of dimension, this here, as you start to go, I didn't hear that the first time. I'm sure you said it. I think you said it. In fact, I know you said it, but now I really get it. And then the next time it's like, oh, now I even get it more.
Yeah.
There's always more layers to discover.
And I think what's really important, because here's where you're going to lose. This is where men become losers. Women too. When we want something and we go for it, but we're unfamiliar or it's not part of our routine or a regular part of life, the accountability isn't there. And so what I've seen is people will pay money and buy these courses and they just don't do them. So what I love about the live community is that you're holding each other accountable. You're actually supporting each other to grow, exponentially grow. And that's super important because we want you to win. And it's so easy to jump into something and then just not do it or forget about it or make up excuses. And so that's why I love live things. And that's why I love community. And because the container helps you with that momentum.
Yeah. If you learn in an isolated environment, which normally happens just intellectually without the embodiment, but then that ecosystem of a community around you, the chances that it really does something inside you that is truly transformational is very small because these embodiment practices, they have to transform inside you, but then they need to be realized in your partnership. And then in that partnership with another person, then there must be a community around that to also support it. And so that's why we are having this men's group community. Plus you'll then have access to the Love Lab, which is where then
it's co-ed
couples are coming together. You're running your women's group. Everyone comes together and shares from that perspective. But you're going to get the most out of that is if you have this truly dedicated group of men around you, which is the King's Council. So that way then you can start to empower each other and be empowered when you go into your own personal relationships.
I love that we ended up with King's Council sounding like the actual name for it, whereas at the start we're like, it might become this name. But yeah, it's awesome. So definitely check out the application, jump in there. Now is always the time. Now is all we have. Now is always the time. It's going to be an extraordinary journey. I'm very excited. Thank you so much for sharing. It's such a rich landscape, and I'm just so chuffed that men all over the world are just going to have the opportunity to be their epic selves. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm excited. What's going to be that erotic insert? Let's continue this conversation in the explicit portion of the podcast. To do that, upgrade now.